Once upon a time, books were rare and made by hand. Since books were written by hand, they were very expensive. Another reason books were uncommon was very few people could read. Due to very few people being able to read, pictures were added to the pages. These pictures were called illuminations. The term illumination comes from the word illuminate, or to fill with light. This effect is achieved by applying gold leaf, other metals, or precious stones to the letters and images which reflect light and appear to glow. An illuminated letter was usually the first letter of a page or paragraph. It was always enlarged and in color with gold or silver applied in areas. These images used to enhance the letters included animals, plants, and mythological creatures. These images were modified to fit into or around the letter, or in some cases took on the shape of the letter itself. The Egyptians were the first culture known to document events by use of illuminated manuscripts, one of the most famous being the Book of the Dead that dates back to 1310 BC. As written languages developed, various countries adopted the idea of illuminating their manuscripts and carried on the tradition for hundreds of years into medieval Europe during the Middle Ages. By the 7th century, illuminations became a highly respected art form. During this time, some of the most beautiful and famous illuminations were being created in Ireland and England. There were 3 people involved in the creation of illuminations. The parchmenter prepared the animal skins to be used as writing surfaces. During the early Middle Ages, paper from wood pulp was not available yet. Thus, the use of animal skins as a writing surface was typical practice all over the world. The word parchment usually refers to a surface made of sheepskin, while vellum refers to a surface made of calfskin. Both of these were made by stretching the skin in the sun and burnishing it with a rounded stone repeatedly to create a smooth surface. The scribe was the person in charge of copying the words and stories onto pages of parchment to be made into a book. Upon receiving the parchment and checking it for flaws, the scribe would then have several tools to prepare before sitting down to write. He would have to sharpen his quill pen made from a bird's feather. Then he would have to prepare his inks made from ashes, plant material, and egg whites. It was then that he'd be ready to start writing. Once all of the text was in place, the scribe would pass the pages to be done onto the illuminator, who would begin to add the decorative images we call illuminations. He would first make a rough sketch, then outline that with pen. The gold leaf would then go on first, followed by all the other colors made from ground-up stones and plants. During the Middle Ages, most of this kind of work was done in monasteries, so all of these jobs were performed by monks. Illuminations defined a time in history wherein the ability to read was sacred and reserved for religious leaders or those born of royal blood. Because it took great skill to create such items of beauty, and because these creations were so important, it was a great time in history for artists. For without their skills and talents, such beautiful images might not ever have existed. Today, you're going to be an illuminator and create your own illuminated letter. Now, with your letter, it's probably going to be a good idea to practice and try to sketch out your idea on this piece of sketch paper that we've provided you. So the best thing would be to kind of decide where you're going to want your letter and kind of just figure out where you would like it, and then maybe trace that so that you can draw around it and know where your letter is. So hold it tight and just kind of trace around with your pencil. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect because this is just kind of a sketch to get an idea of where how we're going to design our letter today, our illuminated letter. So just go around and just kind of sketch around it just to give you an idea of where your letter is going to be as you design your letter. So there we have that. We have our sketch there, and we just can go around and design our letter from there. Now, I have one that I did earlier, and here we have our W, and I've got a wolf and the moon here, and so I've got that ready. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue my W, my letter, down to my board. And to do that, I'm going to use a glue stick. Now we want to be careful with our glue stick that we don't leave any big blobs of glue because they will come through in our next step. So we want to make sure we have a very thorough but smooth covering of glue. So just go back and forth. This glue stick is not going on very thick. Yours could go on thicker. But you want to make sure that you don't end up with any chunks of glue on here because they will show through in later steps. So once you have your whole backer board fully covered, then you can place down your letter where you would like it and kind of press it down and just kind of make sure it's down. Now we also need to, now that we have that down, is to cover our letter as well. And we are going to just go over our letter as well. And try not to give any big chunks of glue there as well. Now, working kind of quickly because you don't want it to dry too much, we're now going to take our foil that we are going to use as our kind of like the gold leaf, but we're going to use foil today, aluminum foil. And you're just going to push it down. Make sure that you've got the shiny side up. There's a dull side and a shiny side. So make sure you have your shiny side up and just kind of let it fall down and start in the middle and kind of just press out. And just kind of use, we want to be somewhat careful because we don't want to tear the foil. We also want to make sure it's stuck really well. And now I've got my foil on here and you can see a little bit of that W. The next thing that we can do to make our letter stand out a little bit more is to use our eraser pencil. Now remember, this is foil and it's going to be a little bit delicate, so just use your eraser and kind of go around the edge of your letter very softly and carefully because we don't want to tear our foil. Making sure we're just using the eraser, not letting any sharp bits like the metal touch and accidentally tear our foil. And just kind of go around pressing that in and giving us a more raised look and making sure that it's nice and stuck. And then we can turn it over and just very carefully just fold the edges in. You don't want to pull too tight or you might tear the foil. So just back and forth like this. If you want, you can put a little bit of glue here to hold the edges down. And just kind of push that down, then turn it and go to the other side. Here, maybe put a little bit of glue here and here. And you'll notice there's a bit of space here, so you can take and you can write your name on the back here so that you know that it is yours. Now, there's a couple ways that you can do this to finish our letter. You could just kind of start taking our Sharpies that we are going to use to color this in with, and we could just start coloring if you just want to design it. Or if you would like, if you have a dull pencil, because you don't want it to be sharp, you can kind of look and line up where your W was. You can kind of feel a little bit and look underneath there. Make sure it's kind of in the right spot, and you can use your sketch. If you hold it carefully, you can use it as a guide. So I'm going to now trace over my wolf that I drew earlier, and I'm just going to, pressing kind of firmly, go over these lines that I drew earlier. And in doing this, when we lift up the paper, we will have the impression of our drawing. So it's leaving a little bit of texture there for us to follow in our next step. And just keep tracing around your design. And then when I pull away the paper, I have got my impression from my drawing there. And then now I can color in my letter how I want to. And you can use whichever colors you want and just color as you want. The Sharpies will make a really iridescent look when we are done. And because the Sharpie is on the foil and it doesn't fully dry for a little bit, you can then go back through and blend your colors a little bit. And it's always a good idea to start from the middle and then color to the outside edge so that you're not going to get your hand into the Sharpies. When you're done, look over your illuminated letter and see if there's any spots that you might want to go over again, and if there's any shiny spots where you don't want them, and you can just kind of go over them again and just kind of color them in a bit. If there's any other details that you want to add in, like I think I want to make this outline around the edge of my moon a little bit darker, so I'm going to just go ahead and go over that again. And just carefully turning my work as I go. And remember not to push too hard because you don't want to accidentally tear your foil either. And I'm noticing a little bit of my blue here on the edge. I'm seeing some silver here, so I'm going to just go over that and just look for little details like that. And then when you're done and all of your people at your table are done, I want you to look through your Sharpies and make sure that you have 12 Sharpies. The caps are all on and you have one of every color. And I hope you enjoyed making your illuminated letter.